We got 12. You got 9.
Well, that's a shame. You were at least 3 short.
Episode 1, ATM. In the skies above Manhattan, New York, Calvin Franz is dropped from a helicopter, and he plunges into a freefall that ends when he crashes into a tree branch, followed by the snowy ground, resulting in his untimely death. Over 2 years after the events in Margrave, Jack Reacher receives a distress message from Francis Neely, his trusted friend who served with him in the 110th Special Investigations Unit. And during their short conversation on the phone, Neely informs Reacher about Franz's death, prompting him to immediately decide to travel to New York. On his flight, Reacher reminisces about his time as a major in the military police, recalling how he requested that Franz join his team when he recognized that Franz's well-reasoned and calm demeanor could unite his newly formed disorderly squad. During his meeting with Neely, they identify through blood work and autopsy that Franz was actually tortured before he was thrown from the helicopter, and realizing that they need to investigate this, Reacher decides to call on the rest of the 110th. Unfortunately, Neely reveals that she was unable to reach any of them, and one of them in particular, Stanley Lowry, was actually killed in a car accident 2 years prior. Upon returning to their hotel room, Neely and Reacher find it in a state of disarray, and with their guns drawn, they cautiously enter, only to find David O'Donnell, another member of the 110th, inside. A tense moment ensues as they almost engage in a fight, but O'Donnell assures them that he's not the one who trashed their room. Instead, he found it in this condition. Having found a flash drive earlier in Franz's office that was seemingly hidden by Franz for the remaining members of the 110th to find, they examine its contents and uncover a list of names, all starting with the initials AM. This discovery leads them to suspect that someone with these initials might have been involved in Franz's murder. Upon arriving in Los Angeles at the International Airport, a man using the name Adrian Mount goes through security. After being cleared, he heads to a restroom stall and burns his passport. Later, wanting a replacement, he meets with a counterfeiter who gives him a new passport, also with the initials AM. But seemingly not wanting anyone to know his real identity, AM coldly slices the counterfeiter's throat and then stabs his bodyguard in the stomach. As the team breaks into the house of another comrade from the 110th, Tony Swan, they are greeted with a foul smell and the sight of a dead dog. Knowing Swan's love for animals, Reacher immediately concludes that Swan must be dead, as he would never let his dog die of thirst. Episode 2, What Happens in Atlantic City. Exiting Swan's house, Reacher notices that they're being tailed, leading him to take initiative and confront their pursuer. With a forceful kick to the front bumper of the car, he triggers the airbag, causing momentary disorientation for the driver and allowing Reacher to beat him until he's unconscious. Afterward, Reacher discovers a police badge in the driver's pocket, realizing that the incapacitated man is none other than Detective Gaetano Russo, the lead investigator on Franz's homicide. While renting a less conspicuous vehicle than Neely's Range Rover, Reacher unexpectedly encounters Carla Dixon, another former colleague from the 110th. Already aware of Franz's murder, Dixon readily joins Reacher's team to seek revenge. Suspecting that Franz and other members of the 110th, namely 2 men, Orozco and Sanchez, were investigating a gambling scheme, the team decides to visit a casino in Atlantic City. During an evening walk, the air between Dixon and Reacher is charged with a palpable tension, as she asks him about his hesitation to pursue a romantic relationship with her when they work together. Concise as ever, Reacher explains that he was her boss, and such a relationship would have just been simply inappropriate. However, their conversation is cut short when they realize that they're being followed, and quick to react, they scramble onto a nearby construction site. As they're attacked, Reacher climbs the structure, receiving minor slashes from one of the assailants, but in the ensuing struggle, he defends himself with a trowel, delivering several blows to the hitman and culminating in a fatal stab to the stomach. Simultaneously, Dixon engages another attacker with a crowbar, and cleverly, she uses his body as a shield against the remaining hitman's bullets. Reacher then confronts the remaining hitman, holding his face under a layer of wet cement, suffocating him to death. Following the heated fight, Reacher and Dixon decide to search the hitman's car and uncover a phone in the process. A call to the last dialed number connects them to Shane Langston, who reveals himself as the orchestrator of Franz's murder and warns Reacher to stay out of his way or face dire consequences. Following this revelation, Reacher and Dixon bury the bodies in the cement and retreat to their hotel room. As they nurse their wounds, the unresolved tension between them peaks, and they end up making love. Arriving with unfortunate news, the casino's security director informs the team that their suspicions of a gambling scam were not accurate, as there have been no significant losses reported by any of the casinos in Atlantic City. However, there's much worse news, as he discloses that the corpses of Orozco and Sanchez have been discovered in New York. Episode 3. Picture says 1,000 words. Faced with this grim reality, the team returns to New York, and upon arrival, they're expectedly pulled over by Russo, who handcuffs Reacher and escorts him to an interrogation room with O'Donnell in tow. Despite being visibly angry with Reacher for interfering with his investigation, Russo proposes that they share information given their common goal. The detective starts by disclosing that they have a suspect who works under the name of Azhari Mahmoud, an arms dealer associated with several terrorist organizations. Upon hearing this name, Reacher identifies that in fact it is the man with the initials AM. After Reacher provides Russo with all of AM's known aliases, Russo discovers that AM is en route to a Denver airport, and they set up a trap for him there. Arriving at the Denver airport, AM, ever vigilant, suspects that some supposed travelers are actually there to arrest him. His suspicions are confirmed when he deliberately knocks over their luggage and finds it suspiciously light, indicating that it's empty and thus they must be undercover agents. Escaping from the airport in a taxi, AM contacts Langston to inform him of the setback and that he now needs to devise a way to reach New York without being arrested. Once Reacher's team regroups, they notice a car observing them, but as it speeds away, Reacher chases it on foot, hurling a barbecue at it in the process. However, before he can interrogate the driver, the man succumbs to a heart attack. Discovering that the driver's ID is linked to New Age Technologies, a private military tech company, Reacher and the team don gloves and masks and crash into New Age's headquarters. Once inside, they begin taking as many files and hard drives as they can before the police arrive. On his way out of the building, Reacher spots a group picture that piques his interest, and he decides to take it. After burning their gloves and masks, the team examine the picture, discovering that their former colleague Swan is working for New Age, standing right behind Langston. Episode 4. A Night at the Symphony. Learning that Swan was the assistant director of security at New Age, the team grapples with the possibility that he might have become corrupt, except for Reacher, who remains steadfast in his belief in Swan's integrity. After examining the files obtained from New Age, the team discovers the company's involvement in a project called Little Wing, and its ties to Senator Malcolm Lavoie. Realizing that reaching the senator might be challenging, they decide to target his legislative director instead, Daniel Boyd. To carry out their plan, the team goes shopping for more elegant attire, which aids Dixon in seducing Boyd at an orchestra performance and luring him to her car where she offers him drugs. As Boyd begins to indulge, he's caught in the act by none other than Oscar Finley, who readily arrests him. In the interrogation room, Reacher and O'Donnell, posing as FBI agents, threaten to expose Boyd's drug use and marital infidelity unless he discloses what Project Little Wing is. Fearing the destruction of his reputation, Boyd confesses that Little Wing was initially a codename for an anti-missile software intended to safeguard commercial aircrafts. However, New Age proposed alterations to the software to engineer a missile that would circumvent an aircraft's anti-missile system, hover above the craft, and then loop back around and strike it from above. This would essentially guarantee that any missile equipped with this technology would hit its target. Armed with this necessary information, Reacher departs from the police station, sincerely thanking Finley for his assistance. Episode 5. Burial. Upon finding out that Swan himself authorized the shipment of 650 missiles armed with the Little Wing technology to New Age's factory in New York, Reacher is plunged into a moral dilemma. He recalls a memory from their military service when a drug raid spiraled out of control, culminating in a fierce gunfight. In the heat of battle, Swan courageously took a bullet for Reacher, an act of bravery that led Reacher to express his gratitude by acknowledging that he owed Swan a favor. Unsurprisingly, Reacher is approached by Lavoie's private security and escorted to Washington to meet with the senator. In a state of desperation, Lavoie requests Reacher's assistance in dismantling the New Age operation. Admitting his mistake in endorsing New Age and passing the bill that set Little Wing into motion, he now realizes the serious threat posed if a terrorist organization would gain access to the Little Wing technology, allowing them to launch unfailing attacks on US military aircraft. With Franz's body finally released from the coroner's office, the team attends his military funeral to pay their respects. As the 21-gun salute echoes through the air, they're startled to find themselves under fire from contract snipers, triggering a shootout between Reacher's team and the assassins. The team seeks refuge behind tombstones, and Neely's remarkable aim eliminates one of the snipers. As the surviving sniper attempts to escape, he is pursued by Reacher and Russo, leading to a car chase that concludes with them colliding into the hitman's car. Upon questioning him, the hitman discloses that he was employed over the phone by Swan, and was scheduled to rendezvous with him in a building at nightfall to collect his payment. Determined to expose the truth of Swan's involvement in the operation, Reacher and Neely accompany the hitman to the building, intending to pretend that everything went according to plan and collect the payment from Swan. The mystery remains unsolved, however, as the moment the hitman steps into the building, the whole place erupts in a huge explosion. Episode 6. New York's Finest. Once the fire is put out, Russo informs the team that no bodies were found except for the hitman that they'd sent in, indicating that Swan was not present. In their quest for answers, the team tracks down and confronts Marlo Burns, New Age's director of operations. Seemingly unaware of Langston's criminal activities, Marlo explains that she fears for her and her daughter's lives, as Langston has threatened them if she interferes with his operations. Marlo then provides the team with a definitive answer, stating that Swan is not involved in the operations but is in fact working against Langston to stop Little Wing. She asserts that anyone who knows Swan would know that he would never succumb to corruption. This revelation relieves Reacher and prompts him to give a snarky look to the rest of the team, forever suspecting Swan of dishonesty. Continuing, Marlo also discloses that Langston currently has Swan in captivity and is forcing him to sign off on all of their illicit deals, making him the scapegoat if things go south. As Russo drives Marlo's daughter Jane to safety, he notices that they're being tailed, and this prompts him to instruct Jane to take cover in the back seat just as their pursuers open fire. Willing to sacrifice his life to protect Jane, Russo instructs her to run to safety behind him while he confronts the hitman, firing at them in retaliation. Despite taking a bullet to the chest and then another, Russo continues shooting, killing his pursuers before falling to the ground. However, the threat is not yet over, as Jane ends up running right into the final hitman, who is ready to shoot her. But just as he's about to pull the trigger, Neely arrives in her car, running him over, saving Jane and allowing her mother to console her. Neely then rushes over to find Russo drawing his last breaths on the ground. Realizing that medical help won't arrive in time, he accepts his fate and reaches out for Neely's hand. In a rare instance of physical contact, Neely holds Russo's hand, comforting him in his final moments and honoring his brave sacrifice in defending the innocent girl. Episode 7. The Man Goes Through. As Reacher senses the impending showdown with Langston, he finds himself reflecting on the last mission he undertook with the 110th. Despite clear orders from his superior to avoid investigating a large-scale drug operation that was allegedly run by a corrupt military lieutenant, Reacher and his team chose to intervene, knowing that it was the right thing to do. Armed and prepared, the 110th intercepts the corrupt lieutenant as he gears up to meet with drug traffickers, and they force the lieutenant and his men to their knees and proceed to inspect their vehicles, ultimately uncovering a massive amount of heroin concealed within the tires. The mission abruptly escalates when the drug traffickers make their appearance, igniting a fierce gunfight. During the vicious battle, the members of the 110th demonstrate their combat prowess, not only neutralizing their enemies individually, but also exhibiting their teamwork as they aid and shield one another, ultimately eliminating every single drug trafficker. Following the successful completion of their mission, the team begins to pack up their belongings amid celebrations, their spirits high as they break into song and merriment, fully aware of what's coming next. As expected, their celebration is interrupted by the arrival of the lieutenant colonel, who chastises them for defying his orders and eventually orders the disbandment of the 110th. After his departure, the team resumes their celebrations, confident in the knowledge that they did the right thing, even if they will never receive recognition for it. In the present day, Reacher and Neely make their way to the hospital with the intention of interrogating the hitman whom Neely had run over the previous day. When the man offers no useful information, Reacher coldly decides to end his life by injecting air into his IV line. As they attempt to leave the hospital, they find themselves confronted by another attacker, and this confrontation escalates into a chase, culminating in a fight between Neely and the man. Neely initially gains the upper hand, managing to throw a pair of scissors into the man's cheek. However, the tide turns when the attacker retaliates with a surgical cast saw, but just in time, Reacher intervenes, unplugging the saw and overpowering the man. The fight then ends with the attacker falling onto the unplugged saw, resulting in his death. Upon discovering the assailant's phone, they decide to contact Langston. By now, Langston has come to expect that Reacher would eliminate anyone he sends his way, just as he's done with all previous hitmen. This realization prompts Langston to take more drastic measures, leading him to reveal that he's managed to kidnap O'Donnell and Dixon and demands a face-to-face meeting with Reacher if he wants his friends to remain alive. Reacher agrees to Langston's demands, but he deceives him by claiming that Neely was killed during the fight, assuring Langston that he will arrive at the New Age factory alone that night. As night falls, O'Donnell and Dixon endure their torture, suffering from relentless punchings and stabbings. Then they're rolled out to be seen by the arriving Reacher, who's forced to witness the harrowing state of his friends. Episode 8, Flyboy. Stripped of his weapon and bound in handcuffs, Reacher is escorted into the factory and forced onto a chair. Outside, Neely, armed with a sniper rifle, skillfully takes down 2 guards, preparing the ground for the imminent arrival of Lavoie's private security, all part of an intricate plan that she and Reacher have devised. Inside the factory, Langston commences a brutal assault on Reacher, each hit a testament to his ruthlessness. In a bone-chilling moment, he presents Reacher with a jar. Inside it, an eye and a finger, the gruesome remnants of Swan. Langston explains with a sinister grin that these macabre tokens are all he needs to breach secure data and authenticate documents using Swan's fingerprint and retinal scan, revealing that Swan is long dead. From her vantage point, Neely watches on as Lavoie's guards parachute from a plane, and simultaneously, she observes Dixon and O'Donnell being loaded onto a helicopter, seemingly destined for their demise. As Lavoie's guards breach the building, Reacher, having freed himself from the handcuffs using a hidden nail, evades the gunfire and eliminates Langston's men one by one. Neely then joins him, providing covering fire as he dashes to the helicopter, managing to cling onto its tire as it ascends. As Langston opens up the cargo door to eject Dixon, her stretcher begins to roll down, but thankfully Reacher has made his way onto the helicopter and manages to hold onto the stretcher, preventing it from plummeting but leaving Dixon suspended in mid-air. Despite Langston's relentless kicks, Reacher, demonstrating his formidable strength, remains unyielding. Eventually, Dixon manages to free herself, scrambles back into the helicopter, and kills Langston's last man, seizing control of the aircraft in the process. Now at their mercy, a terrified Langston pleads with Reacher, promising to disclose AM's identity. Unmoved by Langston's desperate pleas, Reacher drops him from the helicopter, realizing that the pilot knows the location of their meeting with AM. At the house of the New Age's lead engineer, AM arrives only to be met by Reacher and the team. Despite AM's attempts to persuade them with a calm and confident justification for his actions, Reacher, uninterested in his explanations, interrupts him with a sudden gunshot to the abdomen, prompting the entire team to open fire. Initially, the team seemingly allow Langston's engineer and pilot to escape in the helicopter. However, they then decide to test the effectiveness of Little Wing. Once Neely fires a missile at the copter, the team watches as it bypasses the craft, circles back, and strikes from above, proving that the deadly project was real all along. With their mission seemingly successful, the team turns around to find Lavoie's guards aiming their weapons at them. It becomes evident that Lavoie intends to eliminate the team to prevent any risk of them exposing his involvement in the New Age operation. Unfazed by this twist, Reacher reveals that he'd anticipated this all along, proven by the arrival of Homeland Security agents, who simultaneously arrive at Lavoie's house, arresting him for accepting bribes from New Age to partake in their criminal activities. Having secured the $65 million worth of bearer bonds that AM was planning on paying and exchanging for the missiles, the team entrusts the money to Reacher, as they realize that he's the only one among them who's not corrupted by materialistic desires. A few days later, while celebrating their victory around a fire, Reacher discloses what he did with the money, revealing that he generously compensated the families of all of their friends and colleagues who had lost their lives due to the New Age operation. He's also ensured that Dixon, O'Donnell, and Neely, along with their families, will never have to worry about money again. When asked what he did for himself with the money, Reacher gives an expected yet almost unbelievable answer. He simply didn't use any of it on himself. The next morning, as Dixon and Reacher share their final intimate moment together, she compels him to promise her that he will buy something for himself. And keeping his promise, Reacher treats himself to a $2,000 Trailways pass that grants him unlimited travel around the country for a year. Despite being a relatively small purchase, it relieves Neely, who no longer has to worry about him hopping freight trains and hitchhiking to get around. As they bid farewell, Neely urges Reacher to reach out to her more frequently, reminding him that the remaining members of the 110th are his family. Acknowledging this, he agrees to contact her more frequently before boarding the bus, where he settles into his modest seat, traveling to yet another unknown destination and unaware of what awaits him. And that's the end of Reacher Season 2. If you enjoyed this recap, why don't you consider sharing it with a friend or maybe drop us a like? And if you want more recaps on the latest and greatest TV shows, just subscribe to our channel and don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching. BingeBot is logging off.